Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Kamla Ganesh, formerly from the Department of Sociology, Mumbai University, and currently Senior Fellow at Indian Council of Social Science Research. I am talking about the course Sociology of the Indian Diaspora, and right now I am going to discuss the diversities and identities issues in the diaspora with specific reference to caste and class. The objectives of this module are to explore the prevalence of caste and class in the Indian diaspora, to study the class composition and mobility of Indian migrants in the destination, and to understand the dynamics of caste in the old and new diaspora, to evaluate the significance of caste as a factor vis-a-vis language and religion, and to examine whether caste identity is compatible with national identity or Indianness. We saw in the last module the range of diversities in the composition and identity of the Indian diaspora. This includes the diversities arising from the conventional divisions within Indian society itself: caste, class, region, religion, language, and so on. Further, the historical time and circumstances of emigration, the homeland's approach towards its diasporas, the social and cultural fabric of the destination countries, and its policy towards immigrants are also relevant factors that contribute to the profile and identity of a diaspora. One of the most visible internal divisions in Indian society is caste. Even though the structure of the traditional caste system based on separation of castes, mutual interdependence and hierarchy does not exist anymore, castes do exist on the ground and in the minds of people. Moreover, caste is also an idiom, an ethos which is prevalent even if structurally, that is, as a system, it is almost gone. We shall discuss later the nature of transformation in caste structure and its meanings in the contemporary Indian context. It is important to have this as a backdrop to the study of caste in the diaspora. When Indians migrated out of the country, they carried with them their many affiliations, identities, beliefs and practices. The question arises, what happened to caste as affiliation, identity and meaning? Are caste structures and the cultural ethos of caste to be found in the Indian diaspora? Does it only function as an endogamous circle? Does hierarchy remain unchanged in the new setting? When do caste dynamics come into play? When do caste dynamics come into play? And when does caste get diluted or even erased altogether? There is no single answer. It is simplistic to assume that just because diaspora members belong to specific castes, that its structure is replicated or that it carries the same meaning and value that it did in India. Each diaspora needs to be looked at carefully. One of the most universal bases for social stratification is class. Unlike caste, it is found in some form in almost every society in the world. Class is an objective category. It can be acquired in one's lifetime and it includes by definition mobility. There is a complex debate on what constitutes class, but we will not go into it here. We will consider class broadly as a function of income and occupation. Mobility from one class to another can be achieved during an individual's lifetime. Earlier, it used to be argued in the Indian context, especially by Marxian thinkers, that caste is only another form of class. But despite certain broad overlaps, especially in the lowest levels of the caste hierarchy, this relationship is not borne out. Furthermore, even though the lowest ranked castes also tend to be in the poorest classes, low income alone does not capture the humiliation and disprivileges that the former endured. The caste-class nexus needs much nuancing. Several articles in Dipankar Gupta's edited collections of readings throw light on the caste-class debate. Talking about class and mobility in the Indian diaspora, this has to be considered in the context of the major categories of Indian diaspora, namely colonial diaspora, post-independence migration to the West, Gulf migration, and finally IT-related emigration. Leaving aside the pre-colonial migrants, the earliest migrants from India date back to 1834, when the first group of indentured laborers was taken to Mauritius, following the abolition of slavery. You have already read in an earlier module about the colonial systems of labor recruitment, namely indenture, Kangani and the Maistri systems. To give an overview, in this period labor was recruited to serve in the sugarcane fields, rubber and tea estates and railway constructions in South Africa, Fiji, Malaysia, Ceylon. Leaving aside the pre-colonial migrants, the earlier migrants from India date back to 1834, when the first group of indentured labourers were taken from India to Mauritius following the abolition of slavery. You have already read in an earlier module about the colonial systems of labour recruitment, namely indenture, Kangani and Maistri systems. To give an overview, in this period, labour was recruited to serve in the sugarcane fields, rubber and tea estates and railway constructions in South Africa, Fiji, Malaysia, Ceylon, Caribbean region. The objective was to get docile, obedient and able-bodied labour for the colonial projects in other countries, and India was one major source. The preference was therefore for peasant and labouring castes who had the experience and stamina for hard labour. Class-wise, these groups could be termed as working class, but recruitment was not always easy. And in order to fill quotas and meet the requirement of plantation owners, these conditions were sometimes waived and anyone who was available was taken. This included those who had no stable employment, were looking for better opportunities, widows, single women abandoned by families, and some upper castes in dire economic straits. They came from a variety of caste and class background. So one could say that the bulk of indentured labour came from working class and peasant backgrounds, but it also included a proportion of migrants from mixed class backgrounds. The sea voyage was a perilous and hard one, and after they landed, they were subject to harsh and sometimes unfair conditions of labour and living. In the eyes of the recruiters and employers, they were all working class labour from a subject country. The fine distinctions of caste and class background were eliminated. After the indenture contract expired, some stayed on and settled down in their adopted countries. Of these, some flourished. Their descendants took to education or trained in skill-based professions and entered the middle class, and some also into the elite professional class. Others continue to be in working class positions, and depending on the policy of the host countries, are either well integrated or discriminated against and form an underclass with high association with crime. The colonial migrations also included business and trade migrants and those from clerical and service occupations who were drawn from what can be called middle class backgrounds. There is a fallout of this class position in the colonial diaspora. In some hostlands, as in Tanzania, and more generally in East Africa, the majority of the Indian migrants belonged to this trader businessman class. They had over a long period, leveraging their skills and usefulness to the colonial masters, first German and then British, had achieved a middleman status. It was a relatively homogeneous class, even though comprising of different castes of Hindus and Muslims like Bhatiyas and Boras. Yet vis-a-vis native African and colonial policies and politics, this class got racialized and named as Indian. What we see here is a conflation of class with race and nationality. On the whole, it can be said that the descendants of the colonial period emigrants have achieved a fair amount of class mobility, both in terms of their homelands and hostlands, although achieving an equal status with the native citizens of the hostlands has been difficult historically and in contemporary times as well. The post-independence period saw emigrants look to the West for higher education and professional employment. These were drawn generally from upper middle class and elite families who already had a good education in India. In the difficult economic situation where appropriate jobs were scarce, they were migrating for better opportunities. As a class, they have done well for themselves, accumulating wealth, social prestige and further mobility. The migrants to the Gulf from the 1970s onwards constitute a mixed bag class-wise. The bulk are unskilled and semi-skilled labour from the working or lower middle class in India, and a small proportion are highly skilled and qualified professionals from middle and upper classes. While the former endure difficult conditions of living, they earn better money than in India, and many convert this new wealth into status symbols back home. Since Gulf migrants are usually temporary and many return to India, their class position amidst their family and friends is usually enhanced. From the 1980s onwards, with the IT revolution, the composition of migrants to the US and in general to the West has changed. Partly because India is an important part of the IT revolution, their skills in this sector are recognized globally, and there is a premium on Indian migrants of this category. Germany, for example, created a special visa called the Green Card for Indian IT professionals wanting to emigrate to Germany. Indian education system has over the decades, with its affirmative action orientation, opened up to sections of society which previously did not have a presence in higher education. Post-liberalization, privatization and globalization, the aspiration levels and confidence of youth from various sections of Indian society have increased enormously, as has their desire to emigrate to the developed countries. Simultaneously, highly sought after courses and institutes for training in IT have been established on a large scale. IT has a wide range of professional requirements, from simple program writing to sophisticated and complex hardware engineering. At all levels, the trainees in IT come from a range of class backgrounds. Thus, the IT-related emigration to the West includes youth from a variety of social backgrounds, including from rural areas, middle and low castes, and working class backgrounds. Their success has helped them to accumulate wealth and move into upper middle class and upper class position. We now turn to caste. Even though there is much academic and popular writing on caste in India, there is not that much on caste in the Indian diaspora. This situation has to do with several factors. Firstly, caste itself is not very prevalent in the diaspora except for marriage purposes, and that too is diminishing for the second and subsequent generations. Caste society in India acquires its form and substance through a combination of external socio-political and economic factors and subjective consciousness. As Stephen Vertovec observes, outside India, the complex systems of interaction which comprise the living stuff of caste are absent. Caste identities are all that remain. In the initial phases of emigration to a destination which has few Indians, caste distinctions are downplayed due to the absence of external enabling structures, due to being identified by the host as Indian, and due to the overriding compulsion to survive and succeed in a new country. Although caste endogamy in marriage exists, this is perceived as part of the natural order, since all castes believe in this norm and practice it to the extent possible. The subject of caste in India has been written about voluminously by Indologists, sociologists, social scientists in general, and it has also featured extensively in public discourse and in politics. The underlying ideology of the caste system, its historical forms and their evolution, its transformation during the British rule, the effect of anti-caste social and religious movements, anti-caste legislations, the post-independence government policy on affirmative action for underprivileged castes have all been described and analyzed. It is now widely recognized that caste has changed considerably and it no longer exists as a system, but it has found a new role in politics. The so-called lowest castes have found means and voice of assertion. It is also recognized that certain kinds of caste-based discriminations are practiced in some measure. Yet, there is no unanimity on what is the direction of the transformation and what is the future of caste. From the point of view of the Indian diaspora, caste has multiple dimensions, not necessarily nor always reinforcing each other. This has been argued by an influential stream within Indian sociology. Gupta's work on the coexistence of at least two distinct principles, caste as hierarchy and caste as identity, is an example of this position. The relevant issue in the diaspora is whether and to what extent caste operates at the level of identity, culture and structure. Is it prominent enough to fracture the notion of Indianness? This is a large question and can be answered, as in the case of language and region, with case-specific examples. It will depend on factors such as time of migration, the caste composition of the migrants in the hostland, current geopolitical location of the diaspora, and the nature of caste dynamics and discourse in India at that given point in time. The general view that emerges in the literature is that in the colonial diaspora, although migrants came from a range of castes, low, middle and high, caste was not prominent. It was a fluid ethnic marker. The conditions of the long and perilous sea voyage to India and the housing, dining and living conditions during indentured labor made it difficult to observe rules of ritual purity, and there were no caste maintaining authorities and structures. The Jahaji Bhai phenomenon is well known, in which the bonds formed during the sea voyage under shared conditions of danger, hunger and brutal treatment endured even after landing in the destination. It became a lifelong bond, circumventing caste and other markers of differentiation. Endogamy was not maintained rigorously in practice. Female migrants were much smaller in number and were paid wages on fairly equal terms to the men, and so exercised some choice in marriage, not always within the caste. Although caste was not important except for marriage, people identified by castes, albeit most claimed middle caste status. There was fabrication of caste identities enabled by the fluid situation. Ravindra Jain says that caste among Indians in Malaysia and Trinidad has played out at the cultural level rather than as social stratification, since the ideological rather than the structure-functional dimension takes precedence. Caste system has almost disappeared, and even in communities where the semblances of its elements are noticeable, it is neither a structural principle nor is it functionally relevant, according to Jairam. My own work among South African Tamils brought out sharply how caste could remain literally in name but carry no effective meaning. In Madras Presidency at the time of emigration, almost all names carried the caste name, somewhat like a surname. Thus, Gaundar, Padayachi, Pillai, Nayakan and other caste names are common as surnames among South African Tamils, but most people do not know that these are names of castes, nor does it figure in their mutual interactions. In fact, the current ethnic dynamics where Tamils see themselves as different and separate from the Hindiwalas has erased whatever traces of caste awareness might have been there. The new diaspora is more difficult to categorize with respect to caste. Moreover, there have been different waves of emigration after the 1960s to the same destination, and the caste dynamics of each and mutually among the waves are different. For example, it has been noted that in recent years, expression of caste identity among Indians in North America have become prominent. Those who migrated in the 1960s and 70s tended to downplay their caste, religion and nationalism. Their numbers were few and it was a time of struggle to survive and make it. With the passage of time and having achieved professional success, they have felt freer to express their primordial affiliations. At the same time, the newer immigrants come with relatively less pressure to prove themselves and with less inhibitions about their cultural selves. The numbers having increased, there is a social canvas available for play of internal differentiations like caste. Another example would be the social distance between the new diaspora and the old when they find themselves in the same location. Be it the young Indian expatriates recently moved to Singapore and Malaysia and their interactions with the descendants of the colonial migrants, or the new Indian immigrants in the US and their interaction with twice migrant Indians from Caribbean. The cautious, limited and sometimes absence of intermingling has something to do with the indentured labor background of the colonial migrants, in which both caste and class factors play a role. Moreover, host societies in recent decades have evolved their immigration policies. Multiculturalism, with all its limitations, gives recognition to cultural diversities and has official sanction. In this scenario, all manner of internal diversities have got scope for expression. But caste is a tricky issue to express and negotiate. In the public discourse in India, caste and casteism are highly criticized. In diaspora circles, it is not acceptable to express caste publicly, nor do the host societies have any institutional arrangements endorsing it. Yet there are observations that caste is present subtly in social interactions in the private sphere, though there is social intermingling between castes that are close to each other in traditional as well as secular status. In particular, In arranging marriages, caste remains a consideration. This is true for all castes, high and low. Singh's study observes that advertisements aiming to arrange marriages will advertise caste as part of the package. Age, height, caste, nationality, educational qualifications, professions and hobbies. Some will state caste no bar. Others, including those from Dalit castes, will make statements such as prefers a Ravidasiya or Dalit Sikh girl but will welcome other castes. Jat educated family Sikhs and so on. Increasingly in the second and third generation, arranged marriage is disappearing in favor of own choice, and here caste is not a prominent criterion, although marrying within religion and nationality is given some weightage. Secondly, where temple building and administration is concerned, it is usual for a particular caste or community to be at the helm, although devotees and visitors may belong to different castes. Diasporic Indians, as part of building an identity and presence in the hostland and leveraging primordial affiliations, diasporic Indians, as part of building an identity and presence in the hostland and leveraging primordial affiliations, have formed associations of various kinds. Prominent among them are national, regional and linguistic associations. And in recent decades, especially from the 1990s onwards, caste associations are also becoming prominent. They may be based on local subcaste or regional caste affiliation. They play a role in providing a forum for young people to meet with the purpose of finding suitable matrimonial alliances. To illustrate with the case of Brahmins, there are two distinct categories of caste associations. One category is based on a specific jati with a regional linguistic as well as subcaste identity. For example, Bardai Brahman Samaj in London or UK Valam Brahmins Association. The second category is larger in scope, named in a general manner, suggesting a pan-Indian Varna identity, but most such associations are actually in practice region-based. For example, the Brahman Samaj of North America is overwhelmingly North Indian and Hindi speaking in its membership. On the other hand, American Association of Telugu Brahmins is explicit about its regional focus. While BSNA's formal objectives include advancement of Hinduism, racial harmony, integrating Brahmins in one platform, preserving culture, family interaction, strengthening of community and so on, the practical business is fairly straightforward. These associations state that they disapprove of the caste system and take the official position that one can become a Brahmin both by birth and by deeds. This apparently is not seen as contradictory to the thrust for matrimony within the caste, which is actively propagated by them. This is true for other castes as well. This apparently is not seen as contradictory to the thrust for matrimony within the caste, which is actively propagated by them. This is so for other castes as well. In North America, large meetings are held with the purpose of getting young people from the same caste to get to know each other. One such meeting in Atlanta, organized recently by the Patidar Samaj, drew 4,000 people and resulted in 100 marriages. At some levels among the upper and middle castes, caste functions more as cultural differentiation than as social hierarchy. At one such meeting in Atlanta, organized by the Patidar Samaj, there were 4,000 people and it resulted in 100 marriages. At some levels among the upper and middle castes, caste functions more as cultural differentiation than as social hierarchy. It regulates marriage but does not involve discrimination. Yet when it comes to the question of Dalits, there is some evidence that caste discrimination towards Dalits exists in various degrees in the diaspora. Vivek Kumar gives several examples from different parts of the diaspora of ghettoization, an underlying notion of unclean occupations and discriminatory actions like refusing to take water from the same tap, refusing to be served by Dalit volunteers, refusal to handle money touched by Dalits and so on. Discrimination towards and exclusion of Dalits involves not only Hindu communities of India but also Sikh, Christian and Muslim communities from the subcontinents, and examples can be given of Hindu temples and Gurudwaras or Sikh places of worship practicing exclusion covertly or overtly. The phenomenon of Dalit assertion in India over the last few decades and the growth of the Ambedkarite ideological movement and politics has had an impact in the diaspora. Mobilization of Dalits through groups, associations, conferences and campaigns is noticeable. Dalit movements have campaigned in the host societies to recognize and prohibit caste discrimination. They have been particularly effective in the UK. Over the last few decades, there has been a gradual increase in population of those who have arrived in the UK from the Indian subcontinent. Caste prejudices have been taken note of by British society, as is evident in the radio program commissioned by the BBC on Radio 4, The Caste Divide, which was broadcast in April 2003. Subsequent to this, it was strongly felt that there was a need to confront the problem of caste, and this has led to the formation of an organization called Caste Watch, which documents cases of caste discrimination, mostly towards Dalit caste, and campaigns for elimination of caste discrimination. Even though caste discrimination is not expressly prohibited under UK equality legislation, the pressure brought in by Dalit groups along with the progressive sections of society like the Anti-Caste Discrimination Alliance has resulted in amendment of Section 9 of the Equality Act 2010, which now requires the government to introduce secondary legislation to make caste an aspect of race, thereby making caste discrimination a form of race discrimination. The government has provisionally indicated that this legislation will be introduced to Parliament during summer 2015. The government has provisionally indicated that this legislation will be introduced to Parliament shortly. When questions of ethno-nationalism and identity surface in the diasporic context, language and religion are often implicated in the discussions. Caste was not a salient aspect of such discussions until recently. Dalit mobilization and activism have brought the issue of caste into prominence. We see this clearly in the case of Mauritius. Patrick Eisenlohr analyzes the process by which, in this Indian origin majority island, the official categories distinguishing the Indian population are linguistic: Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi and Urdu speakers, referring to ancestral languages which may not necessarily be the language of everyday communication. In the British colonial period, the divisions were into Indo-Mauritians, Sino-Mauritians and general population. But from the 1940s onwards, religious identities came to the forefront, with Hindus and Muslims becoming distinct categories, and the overarching nationalist category of Indo-Mauritians waning in prominence. Hindu and Hindi became conflated under the influence of the Hindu Mahasabha and Arya Samaj. But gradually it was recognized that the Hindi identity would not take care of the Tamil, Telugu and Marathi Hindus, and so these languages also got ancestral language status, serving the purpose of mobilizing distinct ethno-national identities. The category of Muslim remained undifferentiated into linguistic groups, indicating that while ancestral language was seen as a powerful category of differentiation among Hindus, for Muslims, religion was seen as the overarching category. In the dynamics between Indian, Hindu and Muslim, language and linguistic identity became the mediator. What is noticeable in this case is that caste does not come into the forefront of the identity negotiation. To sum up this module on caste and class in the diaspora, these two categories are receiving more attention than before, both among diasporics themselves and among diaspora scholars who study the diaspora. It is not that caste and class are reproduced exactly as they were back in the homeland in the diaspora. In some cases they are diluted, in some cases they adapt, in occasionally they are erased completely. Yet one can say that they continue to manifest subtly, sometimes with changed significance and meaning, sometimes with adaptations and sometimes with radical changes. Another interesting thing that is happening is that caste consciousness and class consciousness are subtly merging. Thank you.